Hi, I'm Mort Satin of the Salt Institute, and I'm the Salt Guru. Now, you've all heard of the benefits of the Mediterranean diet. Well, in fact, that will be the subject of a future episode of the Salt Guru. Today we're going to concentrate on one of the staples that you find in the Mediterranean diet, and that is fish. And in particular, we're going to focus on how to make one of my favorite dishes, and that is salt-roasted sea bass. Now, I was fortunate enough to live in Italy for almost 20 years, and this was one of the most popular ways of preparing fish. The idea is to seal the fish in a miniature salt sarcophagus. And within that sarcophagus, the fish can cook without losing any of its aroma, its flavor, and its juiciness. What kind of fish do you normally use for salt roasting? Well, to be honest, salt roasting works best with a medium-sized fish, let's say 2 to 4 pounds. You can also use a larger fish all the way up to 8 pounds if you want it. And it can also work with center-cut portions of even larger fish. Now, although it will work with any kind of fish, since the salt seals in the juices, I prefer to use a technique with white-fleshed, non-oily fish, along the lines of sea bass or perhaps red snapper, grouper, or even porgy. You don't really want to seal in the oils of an oily fish. So, what do you need? Well, you need a suitable medium-sized fish, preferably fish such as sea bass, which we're going to use today.
Here are the ingredients you'll need. A medium-sized fish from 2 to 8 pounds. When choosing the fish, make sure it's fresh with bright red gills and clear, shiny eyes. You'll need a herb mix for the cavity of the fish, or individual herbs such as rosemary, parsley, or bay leaf. You also need some lemon slices. You'll need about 3 to 5 pounds of kosher salt, which you probably won't use all of. You'll need an egg white to help seal the salt crust, a pan large enough to lie the fish flat in a single layer, and some olive oil to coat the pan so that nothing sticks. The first thing to do is to preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit to make sure that the salt crust seals quickly. Now, we start making the salt mixture by adding the egg whites to about 3 to 4 ounces of water and mixing gently. Then we add this egg white and water mixture to the salt and incorporate it to get a granular consistency. Now, you don't want it too wet, but on the other hand, if it's too dry, this salt mixture will not stick together. Now, let's get to the fish. The first thing we do is to carefully place the lemon slices in the inside cavity. Fresh lemons, particularly those that have a thick peel, add a wonderful aroma to the fish, and you can use limes as well. Once this is done, we can sprinkle the herbs into the same cavity. Now, here I'm using a mixture that I picked up in Corsica that happens to go particularly well with fish. As you know, Napoleon was born in Corsica, and he always said that he knew he was getting close to the island well before he saw it. It was the fragrant aroma of the herbs in the air that told him that he was getting close to his home. Now we begin the final phase of the preparation, placing the fish in a salt crust. Now, I like to simplify cleanup, so I always start by adding a bit of olive oil to the pan to prevent sticking. Just pour a bit of oil on the surface and spread it around evenly so that it prevents the salt layer from adhering to the surface of the pan. Carefully place about a third of the salt mixture on the surface of the pan in a thin layer, and it should be roughly the shape of the fish because you don't want to waste any of the salt. Now in this case I've done it diagonally simply because the fish is quite large. Once that's done, you'll be placing the fish on that thin salt layer and then covering it with the rest of the salt mixture. Try to fully cover the fish and then smooth it down. This is what it should look like just before it goes into the oven. Once it's ready, make sure that you turn down the temperature of the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit before you put the fish in. The fish should bake for 20 to, let's say, 35 minutes, depending on size. I would give it about 8 minutes per pound for a sea bass. Now, it's time to open up the oven and see the results of our labor. In many restaurants and at fancy social events, it's a tradition to break open the crust in front of all the assembled guests. Now, the minute the first crack is made in the crust, the air is filled with this delightful roasted fish aroma. In some places, the youngest person at the table is given the honor of cracking the salt crust open with a wooden hammer. Now, once the crust is cracked open carefully, remove all of the salt crust. Take your time. Make sure there is no salt left on the fish. Some people even use a pastry brush to get rid of all the excess adhering particles. The next step is to carefully remove the skin of the fish, although there are some people who prefer to leave it on. But for today's demonstration, I'll remove it. You have to do this quite carefully. Take your time. Now, once the skin has been removed completely, you should score the fish down the lateral line before slicing it prior to plating it out. You can then plate out the fish any way you want, on individual plates or on a central platter. You can garnish the fish with a sprig of freshly picked chives or parsley, and of course you must have a slice or two of lemon. There is no substitute for salt roasted fish. It has a better taste, a firmer texture, and a more pleasant aroma than any other form of fish. You really must try it, and once you do, you'll be convinced to make this crowd pleaser often. Until next time, this is the Salt Guru saying bye-bye and buon appetito.